give kind of a modified version of this. It was a 40-minute version of this at Texas State. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how this came to be. I've already had an introduction of who I am, but when I was working at Texas State, I worked as a writer in the marketing department, and I had a conversation with a woman who was the director of the Writing Center at Texas State, and she was doing a literacy lecture series, and she asked me to do a lecture on navigating multiple Englishes. And it was this really long topic that she had for her dissertation. I had no idea what that meant, and so what navigating multiple Englishes meant, but I thought, I'll figure it out as I go. So I did what I normally do when I have no idea what I'm doing and want to waste some time. I got on Facebook and spent some time on Facebook. And Wayman was one of my former students at Atascocita, and we had a connection. We've had conversations there on Facebook. And I saw that he had joined a group called Just Because I Speak Proper English Doesn't Mean I'm Talking White. There it is, navigating multiple Englishes. So I had my topic. So what is talking white? Talking white is when an African-American person speaks standard English with no discernible accent or dialect. The dominant culture refers to this person as articulate, which is code for sounding white. And that's one of the reasons that word, articulate, I see some nods here. Articulate is actually pejorative when it's used in that way. Many members of the black community refer to the same speech patterns as talking white, speaking proper, and ultimately selling out. And I think it's important for educators to understand the pressures that African-American students, I taught AP English. I had very few African-American students in my class, and I think of the 200 students that I had, only 3 of them were African-American males. And it's one of the reasons that I really wanted to show this clip, but we will be able to hear it if I can remember, Gabby, how to turn your phone back on.
You should, it's locked. That's okay.
Because even in hearing this clip, you can hear what I'm talking about. This is an example. It comes from Beverly Hills Cop. And it's an example of exactly what I'm talking about. So you'll be able to hear it, even if you can't see it.
Morning, officers. You're on the second team?
We're the first team. Yeah. We're not going to fall for a banana in the tailpipe.
You're not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe?
It should be more natural, brother. It should flow out like this.
Look, man, I ain't falling for no banana in my tailpipe.
Well, that was fun. You were hanging out with this dude too long.
So I think you can hear there that Eddie Murphy is talking to 2 different police officers, one black, one white, and he's making fun of the black officer for sounding white. And if you see the video, you see that he not only is making fun of him in the way that he sounds, but he's effeminizing, he's emasculating him as well. His movements when he's mimicking the African-American officer are feminine. So he's trying to emasculate him at the same time that he's making fun of the way that he speaks. And those are pressures that African-Americans do have. Those are social costs, is how I'm referring to them in this presentation, for what I think is ultimately a class issue. It's a class issue more so than it is a cultural issue. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit too. So first of all, why would someone speak standard English? Well, it's access to the American dream. Standard English is the way that one would speak in order to gain jobs, to assimilate into the dominant society. So we're going to kind of take a little bit of a history lesson through both pop culture and major movements so that you can see what I'm talking about here. This is what the American dream looked like in the 1950s and 60s. You had your mom, dad, and your 2 children. These were really popular TV shows at the time, the Donna Reed Show and the Leave It to Beaver Show. But African Americans were systematically denied access to that American dream. They had seen generations of immigrants come and learn to speak the English language. Maybe they'd come from Germany or they'd come from Italy, learn to speak the language, maybe even change their last name, and then within a generation be able to assimilate into the dominant culture in a way that African Americans could not. So when the civil rights movement came about, the goals were to ultimately to assimilate. To become part of the American dream, to achieve that which was American. And this is the generation that my dad grew up in. So one of the ways that you'd achieve that was through education. This slide shows an example of a black child being integrated into a predominantly white school. And as you can see, she's completely isolated. In the 1960s, during this same time of the Civil Rights Movement, you started to see some positive images of blacks on television. This show was called I Spy, and it was the first show that Bill Cosby was in. And this was also the first positive portrayal and non-stereotypical portrayal of an African-American woman on television. That's a show called Julia. At the same time, towards the tail end of the Civil Rights Movement, you had Black is Beautiful. This was a movement from another segment of the Black community that really questioned the concept and the ideas of assimilation. And really, they were trying to address the issues of self-esteem within the Black community. It's when Blacks were referred to as Negroes before this, and they took the term Black, which was also considered pejorative at the time, and decided to use that as a label and say that Black was beautiful, wearing your hair naturally was beautiful. You don't necessarily have to assimilate into the dominant culture. Not necessarily, you don't have to assimilate into the dominant culture. So this was the 1968 Olympics, where two of the winners of the Olympics, that's the Black Power salute that they're holding up there. So here we come to the 1970s. In 1970, Toni Morrison had published her first book, which was The Bluest Eye, and it deals with these issues of self-esteem and assimilation. The main character, Pecola Breedlove, is a poor young Black girl who's also abused, extremely low self-esteem. She's very much in love with the culture that she's seen all of her life. So that would be the movies, the television shows, the books that she sees, what she learns to read from, that all depict white children, happy white children who don't have eyes like hers, or who don't have lives like hers. And she believes that if she had blue eyes, she'd be happy too. So at this time, you also see this concept of what it is to be Black, this authentic Blackness. And so there were more television shows, and you can see that it doesn't look like Bill Cosby or Julia at this point. It looks, this family, from Good Times, they lived in the projects, they were poor. This was considered more authentic to the Black experience. And you also had the Jeffersons. This was a self-made American man, and they were moving on up. They hadn't quite got there yet. They were moving on up. At this time, you also had blaxploitation movies. Some of these, quite a few of them, were actually produced by white people, kind of exploiting the whole idea of the Black is Beautiful movement. But one of the things I wanted to show you, and this is very similar to what Mrs. Beard was also saying, this whole concept is not limited to African Americans. This concept of these multiple Englishes, and also the way that a person speaking, being able to move and move their status in class. This is an example from Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw, and it's really the premise of that play. And some of you may have seen the movie version, which would have been My Fair Lady. In this play, the professor, Henry Higgins, is a phonetics professor, and he believes that he can take a woman off the street who speaks Cockney English and is of low class, and he can change her status and pass her off as a duchess just by changing the way that she speaks.